how much of this about the shutdown is a scare tactic, how much of it would really affect a lot of Americans, and in the long run, is it good for people? I will tell you that what it shows me is a bit of dysfunction when this happens, but it also shows me that it isn't a death sentence. Now, we've got a precarious economy, and we're going to get into more of this policy stuff. As I said to you, I think as we move closer and closer to the election year, that we are going to see a refining of messages. And Joe Biden is doing exactly what I said. I've got a quote from him we're going to talk about later in the show where he says the safety of children against gun violence is on the ballot. This is going to be a big push in this administration. They can't win on the economy. They can't win on the border. They're going to be looking for areas in which they think they can be winners in the eyes of the American people. But in the end, what will this shutdown do? If it doesn't accomplish anything, it is just stomping your feet and holding your breath until you get your way. If there is information that the American people need to have, I wish our leaders would vocalize it. I would love to be able to hear these refined messages. What we've watched in polling is that Americans, voters, 87% of Republicans and 85% of Democrats, these are voters in this country, believe that both parties are more interested in fighting with each other than they are of solving problems. A big part of that is messaging. As soon as a Republican steps to the podium, we should all do the drinking game. Every time a Republican steps to the podium and talks about Democrats and uses the word Democrats, you have to take a shot. And every time a Democrat takes the podium and they talk about Republicans, take a shot. If they say MAGA Republicans, you got to take 2 shots. You're going to be drunk 30 seconds into those press conferences. And that's what happens, is this is us against them all the time. You hear me speak, and I'm certainly not the most eloquent public speaker on the planet, but I can tell you that I hang on to a set of ideals. I don't demonize Democrats. I don't think they're evil. I think they're wrong. And they're not always wrong. There are times that they are right. And if you got to be courageous enough to say, you have a point there, you're right about that. But instead, we have polarized ourselves because the bases are so polarized. Realistic people that understand that you're not going to get everything you want because of the division in power in Washington realize that in order to get something done, sometimes that negotiation means you get the best that you can get. This is going to sound like a weird analogy, but when you go through a divorce, hiring the right attorney is the best thing you will ever do. And I hate talking about divorce, but in that situation for a negotiation, it's adversarial. The parties involved are emotional, and the stakes are very, very high. So in that regard, there's a fair comparison here. Hiring a lawyer that's dispassionate, that looks at what's real, and then looks to negotiate and telling you from the beginning, you are not going to get everything you think you're entitled to. You are going to have to make some concessions, and you don't want this going in front of a judge because you never know what a judge is going to do. It's better if you settle this with the least amount of expense in the courts. You're not going to pay me, talking about the lawyer. You're not going to pay the other lawyer huge amounts of money, and in the end, get very little. That's what a good lawyer says. Realize from the beginning that this is not going to end exactly the way you want it to, but do the best you can. And those are reasonable people. Well, they have left the conversation many times because they don't want to have this argument and this fight. You're being called a coward and you don't stand up for your principles. If you're a Republican, you're a rhino. What ends up happening is the bases of both parties have made it very clear to the people that have been elected in their party. If you step outside of bounds with us, you're out.